Malcolm Hoenlein is with us. We call this the Weekly Update, Conference of Presidents of Major American Jewish Organizations. Mr. Hoenlein, welcome back to JM and the AM.
Good always to be with you, even on a Black Friday. But we turn it into a blue and white Friday.
Yeah, hopefully. I appreciate that very much. It is a bit more relaxed today, which gives me an opportunity to toss out a philosophical question to you, because normally we're going with the hardcore news, I'm proud to say. But today, again, a bit more relaxed after all. Not everybody around the world gets this, but here in the U.S. we do. It is Thanksgiving weekend. So here's what I was thinking of, Malcolm. Tonight is my grandmother's yahrzeit. I think I've shared with you in the past that she was in high school in Austria when World War I broke out, just to give you some perspective, right?
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, I know. Oh, my goodness is right. Born in 1898. Then, of course, moved to Germany, and both you and I have these German roots. My mother was born in Köln. They now call it Cologne. Your family is from what city in Germany?
My mother from Frankfurt and my father from near Nuremberg, a little town called Emreuth near Fürth, which is well known because of Kissinger.
Oh.
But we have the connection, and it's a small place, but one of the series of communities in southern Bavaria. And later, they believe that some of them were actually people who came in after the expulsion from Spain, came across the Bavarian Alps, and they found now in archaeological digs synagogue remnants of the synagogue in Sephardic design in southern Bavaria.
Wow, that's cool. My mother, in fact, you mentioned Kissinger. My mother was a big Kissinger fan. Could never, but again, because of the proximity, you know. And
they're the only ones who understand what he was saying.
Yeah,
so.
Never forgave him for intermarrying. That's a whole other thing. That was a whole, that was a big topic in my house all the time.
Well, I'll tell you something I can say now, that as I said, my father came from, was close to where his came from, and my, quote, aunt was one of his mother's closest friends. And when I raised it with it, he wouldn't talk about it. He just shut it off every time, and, they found papers of his he was a member of the Aguda as a kid.
Wow.
And they found papers actually with his name and stuff, his test scores, but his membership there. And he wouldn't talk about it. And one time I was invited to the exhibition game in Giant Stadium, of Manchester United, and I was seated between Pele and Kissinger.
Wow, that's cool.
And I was interpreting for them. Kissinger couldn't understand a word Pele said. Pele couldn't understand a word Kissinger said.
And they were both speaking English.
So supposedly.
That's hilarious.
So I interpreted it. From one, I would say, you say, but he said, and then he would say, in Spanish something or semi-English, and I would interpret back and forth between them.
That's unbelievable.
And then at one point, Kissinger just opened up about his Jewish background and asking me questions. And from then on, every time he would raise questions and talk or raise issues about it. And it was a remarkable transformation that took place later in his life, much later. But it was really remarkable.
It's funny because I don't know if you agree with this or not. I was much younger at the time, but it never seemed to me that his Jewishness was a major factor in Washington, especially vis-a-vis negotiations and policy regarding Israel. Now, am I right, or I was just naive back then?
It's probably a combination. To say it played no role is not true. And there were people, certainly during the Soviet Jewry movement, he and I were on opposite sides and got into public clashes, though thank God later on he didn't remember it was me, about Jackson Bannock, which was really critical in the rescue of Jews. He opposed it, as did President Nixon.
Interesting.
Initially, and then Congress, led by Senator Jackson and Congressman Bannock, overruled it, and it got enacted. Eventually, and they brought a lot of pressure to bear on us and on the community to oppose us on it.
But today, someone of his faith, again, meaning Judaism, it would be much more under scrutiny. I mean, we know this just from the Joe Lieberman, potential of him becoming vice president, right?
Right, but it was a big issue then, too. People did raise it, but, he wasn't so overtly involved in the Jewish community.
Right.
He was born of the Jewish faith, but he was not overtly like Joe Lieberman.
Right, that's right.
Was and is, and at the time, and he at times, opposed us and had the famous story about him and Golda Meir about saying that told the secretary, I'm an American and I'm a Secretary of State and I'm a Jew, and she said yes, but we read right to left.
All right. Right. So you're a Jew first. I love that. All right. So why do I bring all this up? You probably are asking yourself. Because I was saying to myself this morning, and maybe it's the whole Black Friday thing. Everybody's going shopping. I'm sure you grew up in a household that always hesitated to buy German products. I have to assume that because I know what happened in my house. That would be the scrutiny. Did this product come from Germany? Did this car come from Germany? The whole thing, right? So now, I don't even know if people realize, but these two major supermarket chains, Aldi and Lidl, are both German companies. And I said to myself, as I'm thinking about my grandmother's yard site tonight, I'm saying, I wonder if my parents would have never walked into those stores to shop because of their, German roots. Wanted to get your opinion on that.
Well, I think that first of all, to scrutinize every product would be almost impossible.
Right.
There were symbolic products, and in our family, yes, you were right. They did not buy German products, and people didn't speak German. I learned to understand it because when elderly relatives came, they would talk in German, so we shouldn't understand.
Correct.
But that's the best education I learned in learning a foreign language.
Right.
But it certainly has changed because of Germany's support for Israel. And in Europe, if it weren't for Germany, we would be in big problems. And even when they take some steps, they took it back right away recently in terms of armaments and other things. And Germany does stand up for Israel in the EU. So I think that has diminished a lot. And frankly, there are a lot of other countries that today, like say Ireland, which is so viciously into Israel, do we boycott Irish products? Do we boycott those others who are, working so adversely towards Israel?
Right, that's true.
So I got a globalized economy.
So I got to stop joking with my wife every time she walks into one of those stores. Do you know what your mother-in-law would say if she knew you? I got to stop that, huh? Is that your advice?
I think so.
All right, let's get to some of the news of the day. I hate starting on this side of the world, but I think it's necessary for the following reason. I think people are not in tune with what the problem was post the demonstration. And again, we discussed some of this last week, and I got to make it clear, and I need you to comment on it. Yes, the mayor-elect of New York did condemn the protests going on at Park East Synagogue. He did condemn them, and he discouraged the language. That's a quote. And he also said that New Yorkers must be, quote, free to enter a house of worship without intimidation. However, when he then followed up with these sacred spaces should not be used to promote activities in violation of international law, as friends of mine from Israel said, now he has legitimized any type of protest like this in New York, obviously in New York, because that's where he's going to be mayor, or really anywhere else. And that's the difference. And I think, Malcolm, people sometimes forget that. And when they're pleading the case out there on behalf of Israel or on behalf of those who find these protests so disturbing, I think people don't realize that, yeah, there may be condemnations from government officials, but as soon as they say something like these sacred spaces should not be used to promote activities in violation of international law, they've taken it to a completely different level. And now those who are running events like this in synagogues are going to have to worry, certainly, much more about providing additional security. Your comments?
Well, I think you said it. It was outrageous that he couldn't just issue a condemnation of the violent activities. He didn't stop people from demonstrating, and even demonstrating near. It's obstructing the entrance. And in fact, they try to block people from getting in the language that was used was horrific, and the commissioners, went to the synagogue and apologized on that last Shabbos about the fact that they failed to have the proper protection and stuff. I'm sure, across the street from the shul is the Russian mission to the UN. I'm sure that they had cops standing there to make sure that nothing spilled over. But they acknowledge a failure on their part, but that has nothing to do with what the mayor's comments. Had he just stuck to the initial condemnation, had this been outside a mosque, I'm sure they wouldn't have qualified it. Right. About the activities of the Muslim Brotherhood care and all the other things who have potential associations with him and things that have been alleged about their connection to groups that openly advocate violence. And here he had a group that simply was talking to people who wanted to find out what are the conditions for moving to Israel or for purchasing a house or whatever. The procedures in Israel. This is the most peaceful activity possible. This is not a violation of international law, as he said. And the very fact that he couldn't just issue a condemnation says where he is at, where his mind is at, that and we should keep this in mind. I'm not saying, obviously he's going to be there for 4 years, and the community needs a lot from the city, and the city, we can't separate ourselves from it, but I think we have to be aware. I think the good news is that the new president of the city council is somebody who is a moderate. She's Jewish. The fact that they would elect her, even this city council, which is generally described as pretty radical, went for a moderate candidate, I think is a positive sign. It sets up a situation for potential differences between the mayor and the city council, but and it also sends a positive message, but we shouldn't think that this is a panacea. This is not a cure for the fundamental problem. When you look at the people appointed to the transition, when you see others who are getting appointed to key positions in the new administration, there's every reason to be concerned, and we have to be outspoken. People cannot be intimidated from going not only to Nefesh B'Nefesh, but to any other event held in a synagogue, because it's the job of the police, and we have an amazing commissioner who does take it personally and seriously, that people have to actually double and quadruple the participation in events to show that we're not intimidated. We have to start today the voter registration for next year's gubernatorial elections, and not wait till a month or two before that. Anybody who didn't register this year and didn't vote not only should be ashamed, but can do tshuva, can repent by registering now and doing it. And I mean this very seriously. It's essential. It'll be a close race, and it's statewide. So it's not the same rules as just a New York City election. And obviously the state has a lot of say in what happens in the city as well. And it communicates a message. But obviously people are very concerned, and I think that they have good reason to be.
And for those curious, the major part of the district in the new speaker of the New York City Council's district, the major part is the Upper East Side of Manhattan. And maybe this was some type of, checks and balances. Maybe some felt that, with the Mamdani administration coming in, they needed someone, who's not identified as a progressive, because obviously the progressives in the city council took a big loss with this whole thing.
Right. But I think it's a message generally from the members that, and I hear it from elected officials, they're concerned. People are concerned. They're worried about where he is headed. Right. And, of course, the controversy over the way the president treated him and met with him, and we discussed it already. Right. But, it still raises hackles in a lot of places about what was the message that was communicated and what happened in the private session. And was this really a setup? Was, the president manipulating? And the problem is that the world saw a different story. They saw the president embracing this very extreme person and who has expressed anti-Semitic views, or certainly has been associated with people who have, and who took the opportunity, the earliest opportunity, at a violent demonstration at a synagogue. If it had been at a mosque, I assure you would not have qualified it about what was going on inside.
Yeah, no question about it. It's America's one and only Jewish Moments in the Morning radio program. Heard a listener-sponsored digital radio around the world, the web at NachumSegal.com, the Nachum Segal Network, and of course the beloved NSN app. Make sure to support our year-end campaign. Go to fjbunity.org or go to the very top at NachumSegal.com. Click on the big banner and become a donor, a supporter, a subscriber, somebody who shows us the appreciation they have, that you have for the daily work that we do around the year here at JMNAM and the Nachum Segal Network. So the story of the week, unfortunately, is what happened, of course, in Washington, D.C. We've seen what foreign nationals have done in Europe. We've discussed this a million times. I'm not just talking about, assassinations or terror attacks. I'm talking, of course, in general as well, something that we continue to see and additionally fear here in the United States. But this obviously got quite a reaction from Washington. I'd like to think bipartisan. I'm not 100% sure about that. Do you think that this horrific terror attack in D.C. is going to actually accentuate and produce some change, or the way things usually go, a week or two from now, it'll be gone and forgotten?
Well, first, we mourn the death of the one soldier and pray for the recovery of the other. No, I think it will resonate for a while, but as you say, it dissipates with time. But we see the more and more aggressive stance being taken, and the more violence that is being introduced in our country, and that the relationship about why an Afghani who fought with or aided American troops, turned this way. I think we'll find out much more about associations. We always do that. There very rarely is somebody truly a lone wolf, that they have no associations whatsoever. But we're seeing the escalation again so soon after the ceasefire in the Middle East, with Hezbollah attacking and wounding 6 soldiers this morning, right. And the escalation still and Hamas still, claiming victories and refusing to disarm, and Hezbollah refusing to disarm, and some saying they're even stronger today than they were, which I do not believe is the case, but they are growing, and Iran is again trying to smuggle weapons, and constantly Israel's finding these weapons depot and blowing them up and taking targeted action, including the killing of Tabatabai, who was the chief of staff in Hezbollah, which was very important move. He was a very bad guy, and as thinning the ranks of their leadership means that they have to reach down deeper and deeper to less and less experienced people, and it breaks up the hierarchy of control. But it does not stop their capacity to import weapons and the amounts are so staggering when you see that 40 or 50% of the tunnels, despite all of those that have been blown up, still exist in Gaza. And if you see a huge weapons depot, there was an explosion of one that just kept going and going and going in the middle of civilian populations, which we have to remind everyone of, that see the true nature, that they don't care about the death of civilians. Israel acts with greater restraint and does not hit unless it's really essential. Usually they hit because they know that something's going to be launched, or because they have, particular intelligence that it necessitates that kind of move. And it's endless. I mean, you realize how much infrastructure, how much investment, billions of dollars from Iran. And Iran, in the meantime, doesn't have water for its people, doesn't have electricity for its people. Major areas, including Tehran, they're talking about moving Tehran, the capital, because they don't have water for people and won't. That half the country doesn't have water and is in drought, unemployed, all that. In the meantime, billions of dollars are going to these terrorist extreme organizations. So despite the outcome of the war, we have to see the reality that Israel still confronts. There's great news. Israel's economy grew 12.5% in the last quarter, which is astonishing. That Israel's, that the life expectancy in Israel is 83.3 years. It's 4th in the world. Japan is number 1, way ahead of the U.S., way ahead of most Western countries. And, so I'm saying this because we can just overload on the negative. Got to look at some of the positive news, too.
No, I hear that. But the New York Times, for example, doesn't even talk about the 6 reservists who are wounded today in southern Syria. But they do make sure to point out that Israeli security forces shot dead 2 Palestinians Thursday after they appeared to surrender. This happened in the quote-unquote West Bank, according to videos released by the International News Agency and 2 Arab television networks. Do you have any update on this? Do you have any idea what type of scrutiny is going into this whole episode?
Well, they have the information. We haven't seen a statement. Israel investigates every one of these cases. Is it possible? But when you find out that they may have had weapons or that they may have been posing some sort of a threat, Israelis are very reluctant and, in fact, often exercise immense restraint. And some people in Israel question it, the degree to try and capture people, not to kill them. But when they pose a threat, nobody denies that these guys are terrorists. Nobody denies that they had been involved in some threatening situation. Yep. And what other armies around the world do naturally every day, Israel does not do. That when they take out a terrorist, it's because it's a situation that demands it. I mean, I know people are critical sometimes at when they do a car ramming or something, but these guys have knives and they're threatening other people. Of course you kill them. That's what you should do. And unfortunately, Israel is limited in its process because it follows the law. Nobody talks about the 1,600 executions in Iran and people summarily being killed, many, many more than the 1,600. And yet there's no UN sessions, no nothing, but the whole focus. And there are, unfortunately, some Israelis who are feeding this information, these allegations, and they often prove to be not true, or circumstances are different than what is being portrayed. So don't jump to conclusions about it. Find out the facts. Can there be people who might say, well, yes, and that's why Israel prosecutes them, and Israel takes actions against its own soldiers, even in a conflict situation, because they want to uphold the highest standards of Jewish values, let alone humanitarian values.
2 hostages, or their remains, to be more accurate, remain, one from Israel, one from Thailand. It's interesting. I mean, I've pointed this out before, where I had given Hamas the benefit of the doubt that they don't know where all these remains are, and sure enough, I was proven wrong. Thank God. You had told me that you felt that they certainly were holding on and understood the value of these bodies. Should we anticipate? Do you think the final 2 will be coming home soon?
Look, you're dealing with an inhumane enemy that manipulates the situation. I said that I thought that they would get them because they had total control over the area. They were mapping them where everybody who had the bodies or the hostages, and meeting the hostages as I have since they got out, and the ones that have visited here. I mean, just amazing. And the bitachon that they express when they talk about Friday nights in the tunnels. They said we made the walls of the tunnels shake, singing Zmira so loud, and the more they prosecuted, the louder we sang. And I mean, it's superhuman stuff. And the stories that will come out, I'm sure ArtScroll will get at least half a dozen books from this. Just a bit amazing, but the truly amazing stories and people. And how some became religious in the tunnels, or more observant, and found God and themselves in these horrific circumstances, and how they emerged whole from it, of 2 years of torture, physical and emotional and mental torture, is superhuman. It's superhuman. I am amazed every time I see it, and it doesn't wear off. It just reinforced as they tell the story of what they did and their resistance within the tunnels, even Israel reviews and has commissions and military commissions that examine every case, and if somebody is found to have been acted excessively, and you think of these young 18-year-olds under the constant pressure and stuff, they will prosecute them.
Yeah. Speaking of the pressure, and we'll go back to Gaza in a minute. But speaking of the pressure, it does seem, at least from, there are certain conversations that go on that don't always make the press, don't always make the news. And it does seem that there are a lot of people in Israel in the know who are concerned that things are really going to heat up over the next couple of weeks up north. That if Israel is, in fact, going to commit to eliminating the real potential of Hezbollah, especially since it seems like they're not getting the cooperation of the Lebanese government, you could address that, that it's going to happen at some point in the next few weeks. Should we anticipate much more action up north?
Well, there is an escalation, and the government has failed to implement the ceasefire agreement, meaning that everything south of the Litani was supposed to be gone. They were supposed to disarm Hezbollah. In fact, many are saying Hezbollah has rearmed. I don't believe quite the exaggerated statements that they're stronger now than they were before. I don't believe that. Both their infrastructure and a lot of their equipment has been taken away. It's a disunited structure, because of the loss of so many of their key people. But it's certainly not a group that has been disarmed. It's not something that the Lebanese army has acted in, except in isolated incidents, to really take control. South of the Litani, there have been some movements and statements by the president of Lebanon and others, and they're claiming that they're not capable of standing up to them alone. The government of Syria supposedly was stopping some of the weapon shipments, although we see contrary signs also. The situation in Syria is certainly not stable, and they don't have exercise control over areas, which is why Israel has to stay in the key positions that they are in right now. This is not they're not interested in the real estate. They're interested in the security and protecting the Druze communities and other minorities, but also Israel's own border. And we're seeing, Iran trying to assert itself again in this, and Turkey certainly, and they're supporting militia groups in Iraq and in Syria and wherever they can, and certainly in Lebanon. So it's Israel will have to continue to take these kind of targeted actions as they have. They don't want to have to go in, but there are a lot of people, and military experts included, who are predicting that another war is inevitable because Hezbollah was not destroyed and the disarmament is not taking place, and the conditions for the ceasefire between them are not being upheld.
Yeah. And back to Gaza for a second. I mean, it's just confusing and I know we discussed it last week, Israeli control before the yellow line, et cetera, et cetera. Now the Trump administration is indicating that they're going to set up some type of encampments or housing within the quote unquote Israeli area for those who are on the other side, meaning I guess we'd call it the northwest side of the yellow line. What's this all about?
So the theory behind it, as I understand, is that, yes, they want to build on the Israeli side because nobody can build on the other side. It's Hamas controlled. It's still the Wild West. And, they don't want to enhance the population there, meaning grow it. So the thought is that if they can get people, Gazans who are not Hamas, to move into areas under Israeli control, into the, across the yellow line, which is an artificial boundary, and it's called the yellow line because they put yellow markers along it, and there are constantly efforts to cross it. And by the way, there are still a couple hundred guys in tunnels in the Israeli sector after all this time. Terrorists who act once in a while, or Israel finds them, and there's talks now to have a surrender where they will get deported or something, there's a lot of pressure being put on Israel that these guys get out. There are dozens or maybe even more who are still in those tunnels that have been there all of this time. But they stayed there in order to carry out terrorist activities from within the Israeli-controlled area. So the idea here is to build housing and have people who are responsible. There are growing movements within Gaza of militias and others who are anti-Hamas. I'm not going to say that they're pro-Israel necessarily. There's some that want to live with Israel, but are not. I wouldn't say that they're going to be allies, or they all have their own agendas. These are like the little warlords and the gangs and militias who are community-based or whatever, and which is what a lot of people feel should have been, the approach all along, to do clan-based organizations that would not succumb to Hamas. But the people who opposed Hamas got very little international support. All the countries condemning Israel did nothing to help those groups for years and years who wanted to oppose Hamas. So Hamas is not dead. Hamas is constantly trying to reorganize within the areas, and they have the majority of the population is in the Hamas-controlled area. So this is an attempt to create a pressure valve to remove people and to try and build and show the other side what can be done.
You've been telling us for quite a while that once the war is over, there'll be an official investigation and likely hearings, et cetera, regarding October 7th. Efrat Livni in the Times reports the Israeli military chief of staff, Lieutenant General Eyal Zamir, on Sunday summoned about a dozen senior commanders to let them know they'd be ousted or disciplined for failures related to the Hamas-led attack that ignited the war in the Gaza Strip. Now, the reason I'm laughing is because we've been waiting for a real investigation and real findings and real responsibility, or those at least who we suspect are going to have to take responsibility, et cetera, et cetera. I don't think that's ever happened yet. And now, nonetheless, they're going ahead and starting to take action against certain people and throwing them out and taking punitive action against them. What do you make of this story?
Well, it's different because the military did do a thorough investigation, and this is the actions they're taking are based upon those internal investigations and holding people to account. Many of those who are being charged, some quit on their own, acknowledging the failures of the system or of the individuals. And that this is a measure that the military, which always holds itself to the highest possible standard and account, and in all circumstances, not just in this very blatant case, and therefore took action against people who, and in the military, you start at the top. There may be individuals, but it's not the individual soldiers that were responsible or held to the standard. It is the leadership, and they have removed some of them, and some have been disciplined, and I'm sure there'll be further action. The civilian review is the one that, people want to know how government officials will be held to account for this, and that we have yet to see. And because of the ongoing circumstances, it gets delayed, but I think we will likely see some action taken. I mean, there will have to be some accounting for them as well. Possibly
the day after this current government ends. How come all my predictions are not coming true, Malcolm? Why am I so bad at this? I predicted that, because I think once the Epstein file vote happened in the Congress, I think they said they had 30 days to release it. So I said they're going to release it Wednesday night of Thanksgiving weekend. Like, isn't that the old trick to make sure to find the slow news day and release it in the middle of the night before? And they didn't take the bait. Why are all my predictions not going well, Malcolm? I need to know.
I think you're not communicating strongly enough with them to tell them what they're supposed to do.
I mean, wouldn't you have thought that's a great idea? You know how this works.
I think you're telling people they shouldn't take your investment advice. They should invest in you, but not with you.
But do you agree that there was some validity to my thought there? Like, that would they look for a really slow news day to toss it out?
To toss out what?
The Epstein files. All the.
You were going back to what you said.
Yeah, like what did you think? When do you think Wednesday night of Thanksgiving weekend at midnight would be like?
Whatever day they put out the Epstein smile is not going to be a slow day because they all love it, and it's amazing the legs this has, and that it will not likely go away for a long time. They're going through tens of thousands of pages, and
so even if they would release it at night on December 24th, you still think it would be massive news?
I still think it would be, yes, because it's exactly what the media wants today, and the ability to distort and misrepresent it. The podcasters and the broadcasters who take Epstein and blow him all out of proportion, and of course that it's a Mossad operation, it's a this operation, which has become the key. And again, I'm urging, and I think we have to hold to account the Jews who make these outrageous statements. not out of malice, but without thinking, and how the world picks up then the condemnations and the, talking about the disgusting Jews who didn't vote. Again, I'm saying that the numbers they're using about the Jewish vote are completely wrong. I don't believe he got even 20%. Maybe 16% of the Jewish vote. If you look, 72% say represents a danger to the Jewish community.
Well,
Jews are saying,
are we back to the New York City mayor?
I'm just going off on it that people are so quick to accept,
right.
Any kind of allegations. But our enemies are working overtime. You see Fuentes again this week, and he and Carlson splitting, and I mean, even the hatred becomes, they can't even unite on that, but they just magnify then the charges against the Jews, and we are in a very critical moment. And people have to be very careful with jumping to conclusions and to from within the community, and holding to account those outside who engage in these really outrageous and reminiscent of past eras kind of accusations against the Jews.
I'm going to wrap up by asking you this, and you could say to me it's privileged information, and you don't have to answer it, obviously. There's no question here you don't have to answer. Thanksgiving weekend's a good time to get together with family and friends. You can imagine that, in this little bit of a looser situation, people start talking about their future, their children's future, our community's future. It's one of those topics that people like myself and others who really focus on these issues, talk about. And one of the things that when we gathered together yesterday with people, one of the things we discussed is that we are trying to convince our children and grandchildren that this is not the place for us in the future. I'm wondering if you say the same thing to your children and grandchildren.
Two of my children bought apartments this year, and I have a grandson who made Aliyah this year with his family. So they're acting on it. I think that it's a broader and broader consensus view, not that people should flee, but people should plan. And the prices just keep going up. So waiting, as one realtor told me, every year you wait, you lose a bedroom. You got to think of the realities that America is changing. As look at Europe, and if you want to understand, just project Europe from a few years ago. Right. To what America will be, in England in particular, is always a model, which is why I often see what's going to happen as I look at what happens there. Right. And see the trends, because it moves country to country. But we should not instill fear. We have to be resolute, because we're not going to be able to leave the billions of dollars of investment in Europe. When people talk about fleeing, they're making statements that can't be upheld. Are you going to leave all the poor behind? You leave behind all of the yeshivot, all the schools, all the institutions, all the things that we built here? No. So, which is why I tell people to use this time, and told them for the last 10 years or 15 years, plan, invest in Israel, to see what options you have. But taking citizenship in European countries, even Irish citizenship, I told them it's ludicrous. These countries are not going to be the answer to the problem. As I understand, if you do it for tax reasons, not for security reasons. So, yes, I think this is a conversation that should be held in every family. Again, not to instill fear, but to motivate that anybody who's not registered and isn't voting does so now, that when there are calls for demonstrations, and we should have rotating people participating in events, we have to become more vocal, we have to become more present, we have to hold our elected officials to account. They get away with too much without, the community responding. And to do it, we need a leadership that will mobilize. We did it for Soviet Jewry. We could break the Soviet Union. We can also break this cycle of hatred in the country. There's no pill for it. There's no instant solution. It means pressuring the education departments, means holding to account. But when you see how some of the key members, when they go to the boards of universities, change did take place. It's not no guarantee permanent, but certainly change that took place. And there's a greater awareness today. We cannot stop at this point, because it's unrealistic to think that 6 million Jews are going to leave. Each family has to make a decision about their future and their assessment of what is happening. Anybody who's blind to it then will be held to account later on.
Well said. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful Shabbos, and we'll speak again next week.
Be well. Have a good Shabbos.
Malcolm Hoenlein, weekly update exclusively here on JM and the AM. Support the work we do and the fact that we bring you amazing segments, including this one each and every day and each and every week. Go to fjbunity.org and support our year-end campaign, fjbunity.org, and support our year-end campaign.